Well, it's one of the most crucial but often trickiest topics in personal growth.
Hmm.
Self-love. Now, I know that term can sound a bit vague, maybe even a little self-indulgent.
Yeah, exactly. It gets dismissed sometimes. But the sources we've looked at define it very differently, not just as a fuzzy feeling, but as a fundamental skill. Maybe the skill that really shapes the quality and direction of your life.
It's foundational.
Absolutely. And if you've ever felt like your confidence is, shaky, built on something unstable, or if you catch yourself constantly shifting who you are depending on who you're with, well, you get why a deeper, more solid sense of self is so important.
We've all been there, haven't we? Measuring our own value using someone else's ruler. And that ruler keeps changing.
It's unpredictable.
That fragility, that's exactly what this work tackles. And the core promise in the material, it's really powerful. It says that when you genuinely start to value and commit to yourself consistently, things change. Big time.
How so?
Well, your whole relationship with challenges shifts. You find you're less reactive to things. And your happiness, it stops being so dependent on what other people do or say. It's a move away from feeling perpetually fragile towards becoming deeply resilient from the inside out.
Okay, so it's about inner strength, not just feeling good momentarily.
Precisely.
The sources point to a central conflict here, right? This kind of cultural conditioning we all swim in.
Oh, definitely. We're basically taught from day one that we have to earn love,
Yeah.
earn approval, earn permission just to take up space or be ourselves.
Yeah.
It sets us up for this lifelong performance.
And performing is just draining.
It's exhausting. We're always trying to perfect how we look, hide the parts we think are flawed, compete with others, all just trying to prove we deserve to be here. But this deep dive, it's about fundamentally rejecting that whole system. It's about waking up to the idea that you already have value. It's inherent.
So our mission today is pretty clear then. We want to unpack the actual steps you can take to shift away from constantly seeking love and permission from, the outside world and move towards allowing it and actually giving it to yourself without all the guilt and hesitation that usually comes along with trying to prioritize yourself.
Yeah, redefining self-care not as a luxury, but as a core responsibility, a non-negotiable.
Okay, let's start right at the foundation, because this really requires a deliberate, conscious shift in how we see ourselves day in and day out. The sources really hammer this point. Every single day, we face this crucial choice.
What choice is that?
It's basically, do you show up as the version of you that other people expect, the one they feel comfortable with, or do you choose to live in line with who you actually are, your authentic self? That choice shapes everything.
And it's a choice most people don't even realize they're making most of the time. They just sort of default. They end up chasing goals someone else set, or adopting behaviors because they think it'll lead to acceptance.
Right, managing their reputation, how they talk, how they dress.
Exactly. They become really good performers.
Yeah.
Excellent, even. But they end up feeling like strangers to their own inner life.
And that disconnect, that's where all the internal friction comes from. The sources say that real peace, genuine confidence, actual power, it starts the moment you decide to live in alignment with that real self.
Not the curated Instagram version.
Definitely not. It's the quiet, honest truth of who you are when no one's watching. And that means facing the mirror, sometimes literally without the filter of what you think others want to see, which,
Right.
let's be honest, can feel pretty scary for a lot of us.
Oh, it's terrifying for many. Because the world operates on this transactional basis for worth. It's constantly telling you, fix this, improve that, earn your keep.
Get better, achieve more.
Always earning. But the absolute core insight running through all this material is revolutionary, really. It's that you were born worthy. Your value isn't something you build or achieve. It's inherent. It's just there.
Right, unpack that a bit. If value is inherent.
It means you don't actually have to earn love. You just need to learn how to allow it, to let it in. And you don't need to gain permission from anyone else to be who you are. You have to learn to give that permission to yourself.
Wow. That feels incredibly liberating just hearing it. But okay, what about the fear? What if you look inside, really look deep, and you're afraid all you'll find are flaws, mistakes, things you don't like? I think that's what stops people.
That's the common fear, absolutely.
Right.
But the sources suggest the deeper truth is usually the opposite. When you look with real honesty past the surface judgments, you don't just find flaws. You find incredible strength. Yeah, strength. You find the resilience that's literally marked by your scars. You find the wisdom that came from making mistakes. You find dignity in the struggles you've overcome. You find the person who somehow kept going, even when things were chaotic or painful.
The survivor?
Exactly. And that person, your true, resilient self, deserves your respect, your support, your love. Not more shame or judgment. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about honoring the person who has already endured so much.
Okay, so this is a daily practice, not a one-time revelation. How do we make it practical? We can't all just, quit our lives and meditate on a mountaintop tomorrow. Where does honoring yourself start on a regular Tuesday afternoon?
It starts small. It
Right.
starts with a quiet pause, right in the middle of a busy work day, or during a tricky conversation with family. Just pause for a second and ask yourself,
Okay.
am I being real right now?
Okay.
Is what I'm saying safe, or is
Yeah.
it true for me? Am I making this decision based on what I genuinely want or need, or am I just trying to manage someone else's potential discomfort? Every time you answer that honestly, even if you don't immediately change your outward action, you strengthen the connection to that authentic self. But when we don't ask that question, when we just go along,
hmm
that's when we slip into self-abandonment.
Which brings us right to the high cost of people-pleasing. The sources call it self-abandonment. We kind of know it hurts us, but maybe we need to hear the specific ways we actually do it day to day.
Yeah, it's insidious because it often feels like the nice or right thing to do. You abandon yourself when you stay silent about something important just to avoid a potential conflict. It's sacrificing your voice for what feels like peace, but it's a false peace.
What else?
You abandon yourself when you automatically say yes to things you really don't want to do, things you dread, wasting your precious time and energy. Or when you pretend to agree with opinions you actually find, well, maybe even offensive, just to fit in or keep things smooth.
These aren't just small compromises, then.
The sources argue they're not small at all. They're subtle but repeated acts of internal betrayal.
And the consequence of that betrayal is really clear in the analysis. Each time you abandon yourself like that, you feel it. You feel smaller, a bit more disconnected, weaker somehow. There's a real psychological and, dare I say, spiritual cost.
There absolutely is. The sources basically say that the price you pay for that external acceptance, for pleasing others, is often losing the connection to your own true self. And ultimately, that price is just too high. It costs you your internal freedom.
So the goal isn't to become selfish or stop caring about people.
Not at all. The goal is to stop betraying yourself in the name of caring for others. It's about finding the balance. How can I connect with others without losing myself? How can I care deeply without sacrificing my own truth, my own needs?
And the idea is when you operate from a place of genuine self-love or self-commitment, you actually can connect more deeply. You don't need to merge or lose yourself.
Exactly. You can care profoundly, but you maintain your own center. And every time you practice this, standing by yourself, even when it might cause a little short-term awkwardness or discomfort, you build self-respect. And that self-respect becomes the currency of your internal worth.
Okay, so once we start making that foundational shift in identity, committing to our real selves, we need to build some practical defenses, right? The next big section in the material focuses on actions, building resilience and setting boundaries. Let's dive into resilience first, especially around fear.
Right. And the sources make a really crucial distinction here. They say fear itself isn't the actual problem. The problem is avoiding the fear.
How so?
Fear is often just noise, a
Yeah.
signal, maybe neutral.
Yeah.
But every single time you back away from something that scares you, whether it's giving that presentation, having that tough conversation, applying for that bigger role, you essentially hand your power over to the fear.
You reinforce it.
Exactly. Avoidance makes your world smaller. It limits your choices. And it guarantees that your confidence stays, well, kind of stunted. The fear doesn't go away when you avoid it. It just festers and grows in the dark corners you create by backing off.
So if avoidance strengthens fear, how do we weaken it? The material suggests it's not about these huge dramatic acts of bravery we see in movies.
No, not usually. It's much more about gradual, steady, intentional movement towards the discomfort. The key concept is intentional exposure.
Okay.
You have to gently, consistently prove to your own nervous system that you can tolerate the feeling of fear without something catastrophic actually happening. And this is where the idea of action before readiness comes in. It's huge.
Action before readiness. I like that. Explain that more.
We tend to wait until we feel brave or motivated or confident before we act, but the sources say no, flip that. Initiate the action before you feel ready, while you still feel the fear.
Okay, give us a practical example. What does that tiny action look like?
It could be the 5-minute rule. Like, instead of waiting until you feel ready to tackle that huge project you're dreading, just commit to working on it for 5 minutes. That's it. Or maybe it's the one-sentence rule for a difficult email. Just write the subject line of the first sentence.
Small steps.
Tiny steps. Or for a difficult conversation, maybe the first step is just saying, hey, can we talk about X sometime this week? That small act, that little bit of behavioral activation, sends a completely new message to your brain. It says, hey, I can do hard things. This discomfort, it's tolerable.
And what's happening inside us, like physiologically, when we take that small, steady action, even though our internal alarm bells might be ringing?
You're essentially updating your nervous system's programming. Fear triggers that fight, flight, freeze response, right? Often over things that aren't actually life-threatening, like, asking for a raise.
Right. Feels like life or death sometimes, though.
Doesn't it? But by taking calm, deliberate action while you feel the physical sensations of fear, the racing heart, the tight chest you're teaching your body, that discomfort doesn't automatically equal danger. You're separating the emotion, fear, from your chosen action, moving forward anyway. That decoupling, that's where real courage gets built. That's resilience.
But fear is tricky, isn't it? It doesn't always show up looking like obvious terror. The sources talk about its disguises.
Oh, absolutely. This is crucial. Fear often hides as perfectionism. That constant need for things to be just right before you start. Waiting for the ideal conditions, the perfect skills, the guaranteed success.
That's just fear of failure.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
It's a very sophisticated way of saying, I'm scared to mess up, so I won't even begin. It also shows up as procrastination. Suddenly finding lots of urgent but easy tasks to do to avoid the bigger, more important task that feels risky.
Cleaning the entire house before starting the report.
Exactly. And maybe the most subtle disguise is overthinking. Getting completely stuck in analysis paralysis, endless planning, researching, preparing, but never actually doing the thing. Recognizing these disguises lets you call them out and choose that small action instead of getting trapped.
Okay, so we face the fear, we take small actions, but life happens. Setbacks are inevitable, right? We'll make mistakes, things won't go as planned. How do we handle those moments so they become learning opportunities, not just reasons to give up?
This is where Chapter 15 in the material is so important. Setbacks must be reframed. They are data points, opportunities for reflection and adjustment. They are not evidence of your personal failure or lack of worth.
Easier said than done sometimes.
For sure. But resilience isn't about never falling. It's about how you treat yourself after you fall. Do you immediately jump into harsh self-criticism, shame, telling yourself you couldn't do it? Or do you take a breath, regroup, maybe analyze what happened, what you can learn, and then adjust your approach? The first way is just self-punishment. The second is actual growth.
That self-compassion piece seems key. Being kind to yourself in the middle of the mess, not just when things are going well. That's what builds sustainable strength.
Absolutely. The person who doesn't quit on themselves, who offers grace when they stumble, that's the person who builds lasting resilience.
Okay, so from building internal resilience, let's shift to protecting ourselves externally. Boundaries. This feels like the practical armor of self-love. Prioritizing needs, setting limits.
Yes. And true strength, according to the sources, isn't about being endlessly accommodating or sacrificing yourself. It's about having the wisdom and courage to know when you need to step back, recharge, and say, sometimes just to yourself, hey, I matter in this equation too.
But this is such a hurdle for so many people. We're often conditioned to see our own needs as like inconvenient burdens, or maybe even selfish. But the sources are really clear. Your needs are valid. They're just human. And meeting them isn't selfish. It's necessary. And you deserve to meet them without feeling guilty about it.
Ah, the guilt trap. That might be the single biggest saboteur when it comes to self-love and boundaries. We feel that wave of guilt wash over us when we try to prioritize ourselves. Why? Because often we were rewarded with praise, acceptance, maybe even love specifically for putting others first consistently.
So the guilt isn't necessarily a sign we're doing something morally wrong.
Exactly. Often that guilt feeling is just a conditioned response. It's signaling, uh-oh, you're deviating from the old programming where you ignored yourself. It's not an accurate moral compass in this context.
So the strategy is notice the guilt, acknowledge it. Ah, there's that conditioned feeling. Maybe name it, and then act anyway. Choose to honor your need despite the guilt.
That's precisely it. And the sources are very encouraging here. They say the more you practice this, honoring your needs, setting the boundary, acting despite that initial wave of discomfort or guilt, the quieter that guilt mechanism actually becomes over time. Yeah, it literally loses its power because you stop reinforcing the cycle. You stop rewarding the guilt signal by immediately complying and abandoning yourself again. You're essentially retraining your emotional system to understand that self-commitment equals safety, not danger.
Okay, that leads us perfectly into the mechanics of boundaries themselves. People often think of them as, like, hostile walls, keep out.
Yeah, and that's a really unhelpful image. A much better definition from the sources is that boundaries aren't walls designed to isolate you. They're more like doors or maybe filters. They help you consciously decide what you allow into your life, into your time, your energy, your focus, and what needs to stay out for your own well-being. They're protective, not punitive.
And communicating them. We often tie ourselves in knots trying to justify saying no, don't we? We feel like we owe this huge explanation.
We really don't. The sources champion simplicity and directness, but respectfully. A simple, thanks so much for thinking of me, but I can't commit to that right now, or that sounds interesting, but it doesn't align with my priorities for this month, is usually enough.
No need for elaborate excuses or apologies?
Nope. You're not required to over-explain or feel bad for protecting your resources. Your no can be complete.
Okay, but let's get into the weeds here because it can feel complex. What if setting a boundary genuinely affects someone else? Someone who maybe relies on you, a demanding boss, a family member who needs a lot. How do the sources suggest navigating that potential fallout when you know your boundary might cause inconvenience or disappointment for someone else?
That's where you have to get really clear on the difference between responsibility and self-sacrifice. You are responsible for managing your own energy, your time, your integrity. You are not ultimately responsible for managing other adults' emotional reactions to your healthy choices.
Say more about that.
If someone pushes back hard against a boundary you've stated clearly and respectfully, if they argue, guilt trip you, or get angry they are, in that moment showing you something important, they're showing you that their comfort or getting their way matters more to them than your well-being or your limits.
Wow, okay, that shifts the perspective.
It really does.
Yeah.
It moves the internal dialogue from, oh no, I feel so guilty for upsetting them, to, okay, I see what's happening here. They're pushing my limit. I need to hold firm for my own peace. That realization is critical information about the dynamic.
That reframing changes everything. And finally, Chapter 6 makes this point really powerfully. Love without boundaries isn't really sustainable love. It just turns into self-sacrifice.
Exactly. You can love someone deeply, truly care about them, and still need to choose distance sometimes or say no to certain requests to protect your own peace, your energy, your mental health. If you find yourself constantly betraying your own needs to keep a relationship going, you're not actually building authentic connection. You're performing dependence. Real healthy relationships are built on honesty, and that includes honesty about your limits.
Okay, let's shift into the daily grind, the ongoing work. We arrive at the internal landscape, the mind. Chapter 2 talks about being a mindset mechanic and highlights something fascinating. Most of us are pretty unaware of the constant stream of negative self-talk running in the background.
Oh, completely unaware, often. It's like this low-grade static humming beneath the surface. The average person's inner critic is way harsher than anything they'd tolerate from someone else.
Right. If a friend spoke to us that way.
We tell them where to go. But that inner judge just quietly whispers things like, you messed up again. You always do this. You should have known better. Who do you think you are? And because these thoughts often go completely unchallenged, they just get accepted as truth.
And they form the foundation for low self-worth.
Precisely. Your mind is constantly listening to your internal narrative. And that unchallenged negative chatter becomes a really debilitating habit, shaping how you feel and what you believe is possible for yourself.
So the starting point for change here is interrupting that pattern, recognizing that a thought is just a thought. It's a suggestion popping into your head, not necessarily a fact, not a life sentence.
Exactly. We can't always choose the thoughts that arise. That seems to be how minds work. But we absolutely can choose which thoughts we engage with, which ones we believe, which ones we feed with our attention.
And this interruption, this conscious intervention, that's where the real internal shift begins. It's not about pretending everything's perfect or slapping on fake positivity.
No, not at all. It's about meeting that inner critic with something grounded, honest, and actually supportive of your growth rather than destructive. Negative thinking thrives in the silence when it goes unopposed. You have to disrupt it with something stabilizing, something calm.
Okay, we need some practical tools here. When that inner critic starts yelling, you're failing or you're not good enough, what are some specific stabilizing things the listener can actually say back to themselves in that moment?
The sources offer some great anchors. When your mind screams you're failing, you can counter calmly. I'm doing the best I can with the resources and energy I have right now, and that is enough.
Okay, that feels grounding. What else?
If it says, you made such a stupid mistake, respond with, I made a mistake. I can learn from this, and I'm still moving forward. Or sometimes, even just acknowledging the thought itself helps. Okay, that's the critic talking again. That thought is just a suggestion, not reality.
So these phrases act like a mental foothold, a place to stand when the emotional storm hits.
Exactly. They diffuse the intensity. They bring you back to a more balanced, clearer perspective. It's about consciously choosing to speak to yourself with clarity and truth, even when the old programming is loud. That discipline is how you start building a safer, more supportive inner world.
And that internal safety is crucial because it connects directly to what Chapter 8 calls a harsh but freeing truth.
Ah, yes, the big one.
Which is, no one else is coming to rescue you from your own unhappiness.
It sounds harsh, doesn't it? But it's actually incredibly liberating when you fully grasp it. Your happiness isn't something you wait for, like a prize you might win if you're lucky. It's something you actively build day by day with small choices. And a huge part of that building process is committing to stop abandoning yourself, stop waiting for external saviors.
We fall into that trap easily, though, outsourcing our emotional well-being.
Constantly. Tying your sense of worth or your happiness to whether someone else apologizes or if you get that promotion or if your relationship status changes, it leaves you feeling perpetually out of control like a puppet on strings.
So reclaiming responsibility means
It means you get to hold the map. You decide the direction. You take ownership of your emotional life, your reactions, your choices. You get to write the next chapter, not wait for someone else to write it for you.
And this requires real clarity, doesn't it? Often uncomfortable honesty with ourselves. The sources say happiness doesn't grow in denial.
No, it suffocates there. It thrives in clarity, and clarity often requires asking some tough questions.
Like what? What kind of hard questions should people be asking?
Questions like, what am I currently tolerating in my relationships, my job, my habits, that is actively draining my energy or making me feel bitter or resentful? What excuses am I making? What patterns am I stuck in? Who or what am I clinging to that's actually keeping me from moving forward?
Oof, those are big.
They are, but denial takes up so much mental energy, constantly justifying why things are okay when they're really not. Clarity, even when it's uncomfortable at first, actually frees up that energy. It allows you to see the situation for what it is, and then you can choose intentional action instead of staying stuck. Stop waiting for the outside world to change before you allow yourself internal peace.
Okay, let's talk about the daily nurturing habits, the ongoing maintenance work that supports this internal clarity and strength. The sources really emphasize that good mental and emotional health isn't about grand occasional gestures. It needs steady, consistent attention.
Absolutely. Like tending a garden. You can't just water it once a month and expect it to thrive. You need regular, small acts of care. And it starts with self-recognition. Chapter 7 talks about gratitude in a specific way.
Not just being thankful for external things.
Right. It's about directing gratitude inward, specifically focusing on acknowledging your own growth, your effort, your resilience, even, and maybe especially, when the outcome wasn't what you hoped for.
So appreciating the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. Gratitude helps you see how far you've actually come, instead of only focusing on the miles still ahead. And on really tough days, gratitude can be a lifeline, just acknowledging simple things. I'm grateful for my breath. I'm grateful I had the strength to get out of bed today. I'm grateful I'm still trying. It's a powerful form of self-rescue, anchoring you in the present.
What about the more physical aspects? The sources mention movement, sleep, journaling as key habits.
Yes, and the perspective on movement is interesting. It's less about exercise for changing your body and more about movement for shifting your state of mind.
How does that work?
A quick walk outside, stretching for 5 minutes, even just putting on music and dancing around your living room. It reconnects you with your physical self, releases pent-up nervous energy and tension. It's like hitting an emotional reset button.
And sleep. We often treat it like wasted time.
Which is a huge mistake, according to the material. Sleep isn't unproductive time. It's essential biological repair time. Deep rest is when your brain cleans itself out, consolidates memories, regulates hormones. Respecting your need for sufficient quality sleep is a fundamental act of self-respect. It underpins everything else.
Okay, and journaling. What's the specific value there beyond just recording events?
It's primarily about creating awareness. Getting those swirling thoughts, anxieties, confusing emotions out of your head and onto paper creates distance. It stops the endless looping.
You can see it more clearly.
Exactly. You start noticing patterns. Huh, I always feel this way on Sunday evenings, or wow, I have that same critical thought every time I try something new. That awareness is power. It allows you to respond to life intentionally instead of just reacting automatically based on old patterns. Even just writing a few honest sentences a day can make a huge difference in releasing that internal pressure.
And finally, chapter 17 talks about creating a daily centering ritual, something non-negotiable.
Yes, this is about carving out protected time, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes. It's more than just routine. It's a deliberate practice to ground yourself. It could be mindful breathing, sitting in silence, gentle stretching, reading something inspiring.
The key is consistency.
Consistency is everything. Over time, that simple, repeated ritual transforms from feeling like another task on your to-do list into a genuine sanctuary, a reliable space you create each day to restore balance, reconnect with yourself, and consciously align your energy with your deeper intentions before you step out into the world's demands.
All right, for this self-love journey to be sustainable, to really evolve over the long term, we have to deal with the past, right? Chapter 9 tackles forgiveness head-on. It urges us to break that cycle of self-punishment that keeps us chained to old hurts and mistakes.
This is often the hardest part for people, I think, because regret can feel strangely productive, like we should keep beating ourselves up. But the sources are adamant. You cannot keep punishing your present self for things you did or didn't do back when you knew less, had fewer coping skills, maybe less emotional intelligence.
You were doing the best you could then.
You genuinely were, with the tools and awareness you possessed at that time. Hindsight is 20/20, but it's unfair to judge your past self by your present standards.
And there's a crucial difference highlighted between accountability and self-punishment.
A massive difference. Real accountability means owning the mistake.
Yeah.
Honestly, yes. Learning a lesson embedded in it, absolutely. And then making concrete changes to do better going forward. Self-punishment, on the other hand, is just endlessly replaying the mistake, criticizing your past self, and dragging that heavy chain of guilt and shame into every new day, every new opportunity. It serves no one.
The sources use a really powerful analogy, don't they, about talking to a child.
They do. It's ask you to imagine speaking to a child you care about, maybe your own child, a niece, a nephew, in the same harsh, critical way you often speak to yourself about your past failures.
You'd never do it.
You never. That child would feel crushed, ashamed, terrified, maybe broken. And the point is, that inner child, that younger, more vulnerable version of you who made those mistakes, they still live inside you, and they still feel the sting of your ongoing criticism.
So forgiveness in this context isn't about pretending bad things didn't happen or excusing behavior that caused harm.
Not at all. It's about evolution. It's about saying, okay, I take responsibility for the lesson here. I see what happened. And then making the conscious choice to move forward without letting the weight of that past mistake define who you are now or limit what you believe is possible for your future.
It's like saying, I acknowledge I did things I regret, things I'm not proud of, but I refuse to let those actions dictate the person I am choosing to become today.
Exactly. It's the decision to stop letting old pain run the show in your current life. Forgiveness, in this sense, allows you to breathe again, to feel fully again, to try again without that constant voice of shame undermining your every effort.
Speaking of things that undermine effort, Chapter 13 takes aim at perfectionism, how it acts as this huge barrier to growth by setting impossible standards and fostering that all-or-nothing thinking.
Perfectionism is so insidious. It often masquerades as having high standards, but really is usually fear wearing a fancy disguise. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough, and the result, paralysis. You don't start or you quit easily.
Because if it can't be perfect, what's the point?
Right. That's the trap. Progress, on the other hand, is the sustainable path. Progress embraces messiness, flexibility. It values consistency way more than flawlessness. It understands that growth is iterative. It happens through trying things, making adjustments, learning from what doesn't work. It's not about hitting a bullseye on the first try every time.
And this connects directly to celebrating small wins, which is Chapter 10. If we only wait to celebrate crossing the huge finish line, we're setting ourselves up for discouragement.
Absolutely. Acknowledging and genuinely celebrating the small steps, that's how you build momentum and self-belief. It's like collecting evidence for your brain. proof points.
What kind of small wins are we talking about?
It could be anything. Celebrating that you held firm on a boundary, even just for one interaction. Celebrating that you caught a negative thought and consciously replaced it. Celebrating that you dragged yourself out for that walk even when you didn't feel like it. Celebrating that you simply got through a tough day without completely falling apart.
These small acts reinforce your capability.
They do. They build that confidence muscle slowly, steadily, realistically, from the ground up. And a golden rule here, emphasized strongly, is stop the comparison game, especially comparing your messy, real-life journey to someone else's curated highlight reel online. You must measure your progress only against your own past self. That's the only benchmark that matters.
Okay, so moving towards the final alignment pieces. Chapter 18 introduces visualization as a powerful tool.
Yeah, this isn't just wishful thinking. It's intentional brain training. The idea is to create a really vivid, detailed mental blueprint of your best self in action.
Not some fantasy version.
No, not a fantasy version.
Yeah.
It's about imagining how the version of you who is living in alignment with your values actually thinks, acts, and feels, especially when faced with typical challenges or triggers. How do they handle stress? How do they respond to setbacks? How do they speak to themselves?
And visualizing this regularly actually helps.
The science suggests it does, because the brain doesn't always clearly distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. So when you consistently visualize yourself, say, responding to criticism with calm self-assurance or facing a fear with steady, deliberate steps, you are literally priming your neural pathways to make that response more likely, more automatic when the real situation arises. It's like mental rehearsal.
Rehearsing for success. I like that.
And to bolster that internal work, you need the right external environment. Chapter 12 talks about your supporting cast.
The people around you.
Exactly. The importance of surrounding yourself with people who genuinely support your growth, not just your current comfort level or your old patterns. People who can offer honest, constructive feedback when needed, but who also celebrate your wins sincerely, without envy or trying to pull you back down.
And that sometimes means letting go.
Critically, yes. It means being willing to create distance from, or even end, connections that consistently limit your potential, drain your energy, or actively try to guilt you back into playing small when you start to change and grow.
Yeah.
If you start setting boundaries or prioritizing your well-being, and someone consistently pushes back or makes you feel bad about it, that's a huge red flag.
It signals they might be more invested in the old you, the one who maybe met their needs better, than in your actual evolution.
Precisely. And you are not obligated to carry the emotional weight for people who resist your growth. Choosing your support system wisely is a profound act of self-love.
Which brings us to the final overarching commitment from Chapter 20.
Yes, the ultimate takeaway, really. It's about committing fully, deeply to loving and supporting yourself through the challenges, the setbacks, the messy parts, not just when things are easy and going well. It's that unwavering commitment, that decision to consistently show up for yourself no matter what, that builds true, deep, unshakable resilience. It's choosing your own worth again and again, regardless of circumstances. #tag outro.
Wow. We have definitely covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from unpacking the very idea of inherent worth all the way to the nitty-gritty daily practices of managing your mindset and setting boundaries. If we had to boil it down, the core shift seems to be this move away from constantly seeking validation and permission from the outside.
Right.
And towards giving yourself that permission internally. Seeing boundaries not as selfish, but as a necessary responsibility. And really valuing that consistent, imperfect progress over getting stuck in the trap of perfectionism.
Exactly. And the result, the promise of this work, is that when you dedicate yourself to this path of self-commitment, your life starts to feel less like a stressful performance you have to keep up, and more like coming home to yourself, feeling safe, grounded, validated from within. You stop apologizing for simply existing, you stop waiting for others to make you feel okay, and you build that peace and stability right inside yourself.
That sounds pretty incredible. So as you, our listener, reflect on everything we've discussed in this deep dive and maybe start thinking about your own next steps, here's the final provocative thought we want to leave you with, drawn straight from the material.
Consider this. If your inherent worth doesn't actually vanish because of your lowest moments, your past mistakes, your biggest failures, your perceived flaws, then what is one immediate, maybe very simple action you can take today to extend that exact same grace, that same understanding, that same forgiveness and support to the person you are right now in this present moment? Just start there. That one conscious act of kindness towards your present self, that can be the beginning of everything.
That's a powerful place to end. That's all for this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us and digging into this with us.
Thank you.
If you found value, clarity, or some practical steps you can use in this conversation, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps us keep bringing you these in-depth explorations. Keep seeking your truth, keep reflecting, and we'll talk soon.